Hey guys, it's Jason Webb. This is the show that highlights local business leaders and the movers and shakers of Minnesota. Welcome to Minnesota Made. All right, guys, I guess I'm not sitting here with Chris, but we are doing a virtual podcast this morning. In front of me on my monitor is Chris Pham, and he is an attorney and entrepreneur. He is an attorney with the Fredrikson and Byron law firm, headquartered out of Minnesota. I believe, Chris, you said it's the second, as far as you know, the second largest law firm in Minnesota. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. Correct.
And the reason why that came up, I was doing a little research on you, Chris, before this all started, and I brought up the Fredrikson and Byron website. And the thing that caught my eye, man, is, you click on Our People, and the first thing you see is an alphabet from A to Z. And it's not the typical page where it has, the headshots of 7 attorneys and they're talking about what they like to do on the weekends. Instead, man, how many people did you say are part of this firm?
We are over 300 attorneys firm-wide.
Wow. And do you guys specialize in anything particular? Not so much you specifically, but the firm. Are they just kind of across the board and can do anything you need?
Yeah, pretty much. We're a full-service, one-stop shop. We pretty much do everything under the sun with very few exceptions. We don't really do family law or much criminal law. We do some white-collar crime stuff in the criminal law world. But other than that, I mean, you name it, we can probably do it. Anything from intellectual property, litigation, sports entertainment, all your mergers and acquisitions, corporate transactional stuff. So yeah, we do a lot of things, including, newer areas, as things change in the marketplace, we try to get ahead of the curve. So, when cybersecurity over the last couple of years is really booming, we got involved in that space. We have an intellectual, artificial intelligence practice as well. So, we grow and expand and develop with the marketplace.
Interesting. Yeah, you guys are all over. And so being an attorney, you know of any good attorney jokes?
None off the top of my head. I follow some attorney meme pages on Instagram, and they're definitely funny when I see them, but no, I can't recall any off the top of my head.
Worse than attorney jokes are chiropractor jokes. I used to be a chiropractor before doing what I do now. And here's a joke for you. How many chiropractors does it take to screw in a light bulb?
No clue.
Well, it just takes one, but you have to come back for 30 visits.
Fair enough. I've definitely seen my fair share of chiropractors. And, one of the things in my experience, I always wonder, I just need to come in for a quick adjustment, 30, just do your thing. But it's like you have all of these quote unquote assessments and, we'll just do this. And I mean, then you're scheduled for 3 visits over the next week. So.
Right. Just fix the damn thing, right?
Just need a quick adjustment. I know it doesn't take that long. So.
All right. So, Chris, let's see. Going through law school, that's no joke. I went through chiropractic school. That sucked. But before we get to that point in your timeline here, can you talk a little bit about little Chris? What was it like? Yeah, your childhood. What did it take to get to the point where you are now? Maybe some of the wins and losses or some of the pivotal moments in your life. Maybe touch on those a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to share. So I was born in Hollywood, California. Right around, what's that?
Hollywood,
California. Yeah. I think there's only one hospital in Hollywood. I think it's Kaiser Permanente. Not sure if it's still there, but yeah. So both of my parents immigrated from Vietnam in the late 70s, right at the tail end of the Vietnam War. Wow. So my dad moved here to the US, to California specifically with his family. And my mom moved here with a host family. And so they met in California. And shortly thereafter, they had my sister, who's 1 year older than I am, in Pasadena, California. And then myself a year after her. So that's where we were born. And, unfortunately, although I was born in Hollywood and, you'd have thought I was born to be a star, we quickly relocated. almost immediately. I think we moved to North Carolina first for all of 3 minutes. It was so brief from what I understand. And then, ended up here in Minneapolis.
Okay.
So I pretty much grew up my whole life here in Minneapolis.
Okay. What age were you when you moved to Minneapolis?
To Minneapolis, I would say I was probably 3 or 4 years old when I
Oh,
moved here. And so
yeah.
from what I recall, the first place we lived in was in Riverside.
Okay.
So in one of those super tall high-rise apartment complexes over there. Grew up there. I think we lived there for just 2-3 years, and then relocated to North Minneapolis. And so that's where most of my childhood upbringing took place, was in North Minneapolis.
So what was childhood like? I mean, you're 3, 4, living in North Minneapolis. You have a sister that's a year older than you, right? Going to public school, I assume. And mom and dad, are they working full time, or what was that like?
Yep. So yeah, as far back as I can remember, my sister and I really had to fend for ourselves. So even, when we were living in Riverside, I'm talking about, 4 or 5 years old, both of my parents worked full time. They didn't put us in latchkey or any daycare programs. I mean, for us, waking up was like, all right, we had to get out chairs just to be able to reach the cereal box. If we're out of milk, we're like scavenging, through change underneath couch cushions, just so that we can go to the corner store to buy, a half a gallon of milk. And that usually was just one of us going and one of us staying at home, because we didn't have house keys. My parents didn't even know that we were leaving. They just got up and went to work. It's kind of like, all right, shit, we're hungry. Like, what are we going to eat? And sometimes that was cereal 3 times a day. Sometimes it was PBJ sandwiches 3 times a day.
Wow.
So at a very, very extremely, early age, my sister and I were already, becoming self-sufficient.
Right.
Fast forward a little bit, we moved to North Minneapolis, and, we didn't go to a public school. We went to Ascension, which is a private school in North Minneapolis. And so I started there in 2nd grade. My sister was in 3rd grade, and, more of the same. Both parents got up and went to work every day. And so my sister and I had to get up, and, we walked to school every day. It's about 3 blocks away from where we lived.
Mm.
And so walking there, walking home after school, and by 4th grade, you talk about pivotal, moments in my life and turning points. My dad left at that point. He pretty much, he was working for a company, and, he was stationed in Malaysia quite a bit. So he was always gone out of town. Next thing we know, he had gotten married there and had a couple of kids there, all while, my mom and my sister and I were here in Minneapolis. And so ultimately he decided, you know what, I'm just going to move there. So he did that. And, that was, obviously completely shocking.
Right.
That was even before, I think, my mom and my dad finalized the divorce. I think he came back like a year later after moving, just to, wrap up his affairs, which meant finalizing the divorce and pretty much emptying out, all of the bank accounts that him and my mom shared.
Oh my.
He ran up, significant credit card debt, just taking out cash advances, like pretty much taking all the money he could, selling all of his assets, cars, whatever he had, he sold it all, took all the money, and then like left. Right. And so this is around 5th grade. And I recall, my mom was telling me the story the other day. We went to a grocery store, she was just trying to get, food for the week. And, we have a cart full of food, and, my mom goes to pay, and like, her credit card was declined, her debit card was declined, everything was declined. And she starts just bawling,
Oh,
and, I'm in 4th, 5th grade. I'm like trying to, understand what's going on,
right.
and pretty much it was like, your dad took everything. Like, we don't have anything. So that night we went home, we had to eat, ramen noodles and what have you. And, luckily for my mom, I think that following Friday, she got some kind of small bonus from work that was completely unexpected, a few $100s, and that got us, fed through the month.
Oh,
So my mom, she took on a 2nd job and then a 3rd job, and it was more of the same. She did the best she could to provide for my sister and I, keep a roof over our heads, keep us fed and keep us in that private school. So she's working, around the clock, and again, my sister and I just taking care of ourselves, on a day-to-day basis. So, that I would say was one of the first major turning points, you know, in my early childhood.
Yeah, man, that is rough. And it's always interesting to hear stories like that. It makes you who you are today. I know in the moment it seems horrible, right? Like super stressful, but this too shall pass, you know. And I
Absolutely.
really appreciate your candor in bringing that up. I'm sorry you had to go through that. And you know, the short time we talked before starting this podcast, man, you've come a long freaking way, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, that's the thing. Even though, you know, growing up, you know, without a father present. So, you know, when I say my dad left, I mean, he left. There were no phone calls, no letters, no correspondence, no financial help, child support, nothing. Like he completely abandoned our family. Um, you know, and I think while most people would view, you know, a divorce or, you know, a family breaking up as, you know, sad and unfortunate, I think I perceived it differently. And the reason why that is because, you know, my mom was a victim of abuse. You know, so she was a victim of physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. Like my dad was terrible towards her. You know, he's put her in the hospital. You know, there were moments where, you know, she would lock him out because he would come home drunk and, you know, he'd punch through the window, you know, give her black eyes. Like I've seen so much trauma, you know, that I think it forced me at a very young age to kind of man up, if you will. You know, so it's just my sister and I, my mom, and, you know, I'm the only male. And I always felt like I had to be the strong one.
Right.
You know, if my sister's crying, like I wouldn't cry, you know, I'd be the supportive one. And so I think dealing with that from as young as I can remember, probably, you know, from a toddler, you know, to fourth grade, like just that short window of dealing with that kind of trauma and being exposed to that type of violence within my home, you
Terrible.
know, I think that, you know, was a breath of fresh air when he was gone. And so like, I didn't think twice about the fact, you know, that my dad had just moved to another country. It was kind of like, all right, you know, breath of fresh air. Now I can, you know, move on with my life. My mom can do the same. And, you know, we can go from there.
Wow, man. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. So, you know, he left around, I think you said fourth grade, sisters in fifth grade, right?
Yep.
Um, so I don't know, you know, you went through high school. Did you play any sports? You graduated, and then you went to college right after, or can you play that out for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, sports were definitely my escape from the realities of, you know, the upbringing and the environment we grew up in. You know, North Minneapolis, there were, you know, a lot of peers that were involved, you know, in gangs and drugs and violence and things like that. And I think, you know, sports was definitely like my saving grace. You know, I had a really, you know, tight knit group of friends, you know, in my immediate neighborhood in a cul-de-sac. And like, that's what we did, you know, you know, as soon as the sun came up to sundown, we were playing sports, whether it was tennis, basketball, football, baseball, you know, ping pong, like everything that we can do, rollerblade, you know, we did that. And so I started playing organized sports in fifth grade. I played soccer in the fall, basketball in the winter, and then baseball in the spring. Did that throughout um, grade school and junior high. And then, you know, I think another pivotal moment for me was when I was in junior high. Uh, and I'll backtrack real quick. Between fifth and sixth grade, I think, you know, I've always done well academically, but I started to get, you know, into some trouble, you know, behavioral issues. And I think my principal at my grade school thought that might have been a result of, you know, my father leaving, et cetera. And so, you know, she was really instrumental in, you know, making sure that I didn't slip through the cracks and get in any more trouble. So she organized and helped me get a job at the Cookie Cart, which is a nonprofit bakery in North Minneapolis. And at that time, it was, you know, just comprised of youth workers. Um, and so I started working there, I think, when I was in eighth grade. So after school, I'd go over there, bake cookies with other youth employees.
Who
And
was this person?
ultimately,
I'm sorry,
with,
Chris. Who was this person that kind of set this up for you?
it was my principal, Dora Watha Woods.
Yeah. All
She
right.
was, yeah, she was my principal from second grade to eighth grade. You know, and as I mentioned, I'd always done well academically, never had any behavioral issues. But then I think, you know, between fifth and sixth grade, Well, my grades were still stellar. I think, I started getting a little bit more trouble. And I think she saw that and acknowledged that. And, you know, she wanted to really help me out. And so, when she helped me get into the cookie cart, it wasn't just so that I'd have a job and an opportunity to make money after school, but it was to get me into a program that was offered at that time through the cookie cart, which was, to pay for my high school education if I went to a private school.
Okay.
So ultimately, after graduating from Ascension in 8th grade, I went to De La Salle High School and continued to work at the cookie cart. And they took care of my tuition 100%, helped my mom pay for school supplies, my uniform. And, it's ironic because that summer in between 8th and 9th grade, me and some friends were just being, reckless, doing things that kids do, and, ended up getting arrested and going to a truancy center. And I remember, when I started at De La Salle, my English teacher and, the 9th grade basketball coach, approached me and said, "Hey, we heard about, your extracurriculars over the summer, and we just want to let you know that we don't tolerate that here at De La Salle. We know you love to play sports. We know you do well academically, but, your behavior has to be, on par with that. We don't accept that type of, troublemaking, and so at that point, I realized that, I'm at a great institution, one that wants to see me succeed. So from there, focused on the grades, played, continue to play sports, 3 sports every year, continue to work at the cookie cart, and really get my life together at that point.
Great, man. Yeah, I've been down that road too. I was running with the wrong crowd for a little while and got in a little trouble. And it's interesting when those types of things happen to people. Okay, so I won't get into my details, but brief overview. Me, Chad, Greg, and I had something happen one night, and after that happened, man, it scared me straight. Like, screw that, right? Chad continued on the same path, getting in trouble, more things happened. Greg, from that point forward, only got worse. Ooh. And is this how people, I don't know why people react differently to those types of situations. It's maybe it's just part of who we are, but kudos to you, man, being like, all right, I got a great opportunity in front of me here, and I don't want to screw this up, and I'm going to take this seriously and clean up my act a little bit,
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And it's interesting because, after getting arrested and getting in trouble at that point, I had to go before a probation officer, I think, and, or a hearing officer, and pretty much talk about what happened, right? And so without even knowing it, that was probably the first time, I represented myself pro se as an attorney. I showed up at this office and I had my report cards, all of my academic, awards and certificates. And, pretty much was like, look, I have never gotten in trouble. This is the first time, and I learned my lesson, and like I have the grades to prove it, and I'm going to, get on the straight and narrow and, do the right thing going forward. And, they believed me. Apparently I believed myself, and, and the rest was up from there.
Yeah. You're a little attorney in the making way back then.
Yeah, essentially.
Good for you. What was going on with your sister around this time? Was she on the straight and narrow, or?
She was there when I got arrested. I mean, like, we're close in age. We have the same peer group, and there was about 6 or 7 of us squished into the backseat of a police car, and so,
Dang.
While my mother did an exceptional job, being a provider for us, that, the offside of that is, just not being present, right?
Right.
If she's working around the clock, she wasn't able to, attend our extracurricular events, sporting, basketball games and things like that. And she literally worked from 7 a.m. to like 9 p.m. And so after school, it was like, all right, we live 2 blocks from the school. We are by far the closest house. And so our house became the kick it spot. Our basement was like where everybody went after school. I think, the first time I had an alcoholic beverage was, there.
Yeah.
The first time, probably a lot of people smoked weed was there, and that just became kind of like, the place to go. So, needless to say, it was no surprise that, we found ourselves in some trouble at some point because we didn't have, a whole bunch of parental guidance,
Right. Yeah, that's understandable. All right. So after high school, did you know I'm going to go become an attorney right out of the gate? And you had this plan brewing in the back of your mind since, I don't know, your junior year or something, or what was that path?
Unfortunately, I had no idea what I was going to do after high school. While I had, again, the good grades, was at the top of my class, well, my dad was already gone and my mom hadn't been to college,
Hmm.
and so there wasn't a ton of guidance around like, all right, it was always, you got to go to college. Okay, well, that's great. Well, what does that even mean? What does that even look like? And I remember, while I was in school, they said, yeah, you got to take the SAT or the ACT to get into school. I didn't really take that serious at the time. I think I took the very last ACT possible, that I could for being, getting ready to go to college.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I was hungover when I took it, but as luck would have it, I did pretty well. And so I knew I can get into college, based on my ACT. And then the next question was like, all right, where am I going to go? And I think had I had more guidance, I probably would have considered and explored leaving Minneapolis, leaving Minnesota, and going to school somewhere else.
Sure.
I graduated with above a 4.0, so I know I had, the academics to get, into a really good institution. But again, at the time, lack of guidance, I didn't really know what to do. And so I think it was right around, so I graduated high school in May. In 2000, I think in June, I went to visit St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota.
Sure.
And the reason why I went there is because I got a letter and, an offer for a full scholarship. And I was like, all right, well, maybe I should go check it out. I don't even know where I'm going to go to school. And, college starts in like 2 months. So decided to go visit St. John's, and it was a beautiful campus, and it was amazing. And, I figured, look, it's far enough away that, I'll live on campus and have the college experience, but close enough to home that I can drive home on the weekends if I'm homesick or, if I needed anything. So, after that one visit, decided to enroll, go there. And then that following August took off. And, my first year at St. John's was, I definitely had some up and downs. My mom really wanted me to be a doctor. Like, it was her lifelong dream for me to be a doctor. And, that's not an uncommon, theme in Asian households. So, not really having a clue what I was going to embark on and do for myself, I decided, all right, well, mom wants me to be a doctor. I guess that's what I'm going to do. And so I started, my freshman year doing pre-med. So I took, chemistry, biology, had all these labs, a really rigorous course load. And, while I did pretty well academically there, I missed home. I don't know what you know about St. John's, but it's in the middle of nowhere. Like, when you get off the exit, St. John's is all there is.
Yeah. In cornfields, right?
That's exactly it. Like, I mean, like, things that, people wanted to do was like go cow tipping. I didn't even know that was a thing, and so out there, like, I had my roommates like, we're going to go cow tipping, and then we're going to go climb on this huge like ladder or water tower and cover up these lights, like just doing foolish shit. Right. And so I was like, all right, growing up in North Minneapolis, I was used to being in a very diverse setting. And this was definitely culture shock for me. And so it was, I found myself coming back to the Twin Cities more and more, like random Tuesdays after class. Oh, thank God class is over. Like, I'm gonna just hit the road and go back home. And so I think, the writings were on the wall. At that point, I was like, why am I, out here? If I belong in the city, I just need to transfer back. And so I ended up transferring back to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities my sophomore year. And one of the things that I really appreciated about St. John's while I was there, though, is I made some really dope connections with some really dope people. They have quite a robust foreign exchange program. And so I met a lot of guys from the Bahamas and Trinidad and Jamaica. And, I'm still in touch with those guys that, I met in the Bahamas. My very first spring break trip in college was my freshman year. I went to the Bahamas, and it was like such an amazing experience.
Nice.
So I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't go back and say, I wouldn't go to St. John's. I absolutely would do that again, because I really, I met some really great people that really helped shape my life and, provide some memorable experiences.
That's a good story, man. So you're not in the cow tipping and climbing water towers. You figured that
out. No, none of that stuff, man. So I transferred back to the U of M Twin Cities, and I remember the start of my sophomore year, again, continuing on this path of pre-med. So I was enrolled in organic chemistry, more biologies, and I was in this program called Empowering Careers in Medicine for Minorities, So it was like meeting with other diverse students who were interested in becoming doctors. And I remember like 2 weeks into organic chemistry, I was in class with one of my guys. It was an 8 a.m. class in a huge auditorium, and every day we would sleep in the back. And I'd wake up and I'm like, bro, like, why are we here? Like, why are you here? And I was like, I don't think this is for me. And so, OChem definitely, was the end of my pre-med career, right? So I was like, okay, I gotta tell my mom that I'm not gonna be a doctor. I gotta figure out a way to break her heart, right?
Right.
And so when I built up enough courage, I decided to tell her, and I thought she was gonna give me a lot of problems, but her first question was like, okay, well, what are you gonna do instead? And like right off the cuff, I was like, I think I want to be a lawyer, and I had not thought about being a lawyer for 2 seconds before that moment. It was just, doctors, lawyer, prestigious career. Like, mom, I'm going to be somebody. So I'm going to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
She was like, okay, that's a great idea. I think you'd be really good with that, so go for it. So that at that point I had changed my major to sociology, law, criminology, and deviance. And the reason why I picked that major is because I had just taken an introduction class to criminology, and it was interesting. Okay. It was a personally interesting class for me, and I wouldn't have to take any math. When I was in high school, I took AP Calculus, got college credits for it, and I was like, no more math for me as long as I live, if I can do it. So statistics is the only other class I had to take that was related to math in college, and so I ended up finishing at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities with a bachelor's in sociology, law, criminology, and deviance, and a minor in African American studies. And I finished within 4 years. So, wow. I was right on track. And I remember as I was getting ready to graduate, mom was like, all right, so now you're going to law school, right? And again, not even having considered whether I actually want to do that or go to law school. I said, no, I think I'm going to go to grad school first. And she was like, okay, what are you going to do there? And I was like, I want to move to California. And I want to, get a master's in criminal justice and just, get away from here. I thought, at that time, when I graduated from the U of M, some of, my roommates and my peers and my closest friends were still there. And I figured, look, if I stay here, I'm going to continue to do the same thing that I've been doing the last 4 years, which is playing basketball every day, going out and partying every night. Yeah. And if I have any, aspirations of going to law school or anything like that, I need to be able to focus. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to leave.
Yeah.
One other thing that I would talk about, when I was a sophomore, backtrack, I got a call from my grandma in California. She said, hey, your dad wants to see you. And mind you, I'm a sophomore in college, and I had not seen or heard from this man since 4th grade, right? And so, I talked to my sister. I was like, yo, grandma said dad is moving back to California from Malaysia with his wife and 2 kids, and he wants to see us. And I was like, at that point, I had already figured out, like, I was self-sufficient. I had gotten, to a good place, without his presence. So I didn't really care whether, we went to California or not. But, right. My sister's like, I miss that. I want to go. So I was like, all right, cool. Let's make a spring break trip out of it. I'm going to invite a couple of my buddies, invite some of your friends, and let's go to California for spring break. So we ended up going there. First time I saw my dad in a very long time, right. And we had some conversations. It was very, surface level, like, we were both into cars, so we talked about that. And, it really didn't, get into any level of depth. Yeah. The one thing that was very interesting, and I think it was either my grandma or my aunt, who's my dad's sister, gave me a heads up, is like, oh, by the way, when you come to California, your dad's wife and his kids, they don't know that he's ever been married before or have any kids. So as far as they're concerned, that was the very first time he had been married, and those are his only kids. Right? So I'm like, all right, this will be fucking weird, right? Right. To say the least. And so we get there. I didn't meet, his wife and his 2 daughters at all. We just hung out with him a couple of times. And, I remember I had a blast, by the way, like with my friends, like we went out. It was a good time. So it was a good trip, regardless of the awkwardness with my dad. Yeah. Came back, finished at the U of M. And, when I was graduating, I decided to go to grad school in California. Okay. And so I moved to California for grad school. I went to Chapman University, and I lived in Huntington Beach, less than a mile away from my dad. And I thought, here's an opportunity to at least get reconnected with my dad's side of the family. So his whole family lived out there. And despite the fact that, I didn't, speak to him at all, I had always been close to his brothers and sister.
Okay.
So, my extended family got along well with them, got to see them, connect with them, and rarely saw my dad. In the 2 years I lived there, probably saw him a handful of times. Again, it was often awkward because, I think we had like Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner at my aunt's house. And it's like, everybody in this room knows where everybody came from. And then you look at me and, I have light eyes like my dad. And all of a sudden I'm at a family dinner and people probably looking like, okay, who is he? And like, whose kid is that? Or how is he related to this family? Because he just came out of nowhere,
Right.
and, he has his daughters and I'm sure they're wondering the same thing because my dad and I resemble each other.
Yeah.
And so I didn't rock that boat. I never, told my younger sisters that I was their brother or, said anything. I just, went there, I worked, I had a blast living in California and I did my job, I actually finished my degree program like 6 months early.
Wow.
And then I started applying for law school. So this is the first time that I actually thought about law school was when I was in grad school.
Okay.
There's a lawyer in my cohort and she was like, what are you going to do with this? Like I had started getting job offers to be like a probation officer and all these things in criminal justice in law enforcement, but that's not what I wanted to do. So she said, you should really explore law school. And so while I was writing my master's thesis in my last term, I started taking LSAT prep courses. I was like, well, let me just take this LSAT. If I score well enough to get into law school, then I'm going to go. So I took that and I started applying to law schools, was waitlisted in some of the law schools in California, got accepted to one. And then I got accepted to 2 schools here in Minneapolis or Minnesota, got scholarships and ultimately decided, whichever school gives me the most money, that's where I'm going to go for law school. And so I moved back to Minnesota in August 2006 to start law school.
Wow. Where'd you go to law school
I went to Mitchell Hamlin School of Law. So back then it was William Mitchell, now Mitchell Hamlin, because they merged with Hamlin. So those are actually the 2 schools that I was looking at here in the Twin Cities. And so ended up moving here to start law school.
And did you breeze right through it? How'd it go?
No, man, you talk about school being hard. I think law school is the first time I had ever been academically challenged in my life.
Yeah.
So grad school was a breeze. I got straight A's, actually I got 1 A- from one professor who I won't forget. But, other than that, I mean, grad school was a breeze because it was all focused on one area, and it was like an area that was of personal interest to me,
Yeah.
Growing up in North Minneapolis. And then like, as I matriculated to high school and to college and to grad school, I saw that there were fewer and fewer people who looked like me. So I was always interested in that dynamic, the disparity, the education gap, things like that. And, what's going on in society and in the world.
Sure.
So I got through grad school and man, when I started law school, that was another instance where I was like, I almost didn't feel like I belonged. Right. So at that time, in a class of 400 law students in the incoming 1L year, probably less than 10, were diverse students. And, I showed up to law school in sweats and Timberlands and, a hoodie and, I felt super out of place.
Sure.
But I just kept my head in the books. I just focused, found my outlets on the basketball court and hanging out with friends on the weekend and, just got through. Ironically, around that same time, I had my first child.
Oh, wow.
So as a 2L in my second year of law school, my oldest son, Christopher Jr., was born. And a year and a day after he was born, my second son was born. And so I had 2 boys in law school. And so by the time I sat for the bar exam, I had an 18-month-old and a 6-month-old. And looking back, I don't even know how I got through the bar exam and passed the bar on my first try. It was a whirlwind, to get through that process. But to your point, law school is hard, man. And so anytime people approach me like, hey, I'm thinking about going to law school, I always like, so what do you want to do? If you want to actually practice law, go for it. I have people say, I want to be a sports agent. Do I need to go to law school? It's like, not unless you want to torture yourself for 3 years. There are things that you can do without having to go to law school. And, you have to really make sure that this is what you want to do, because not only is it expensive as hell, it is really rigorous and demanding to get through. So.
Okay. All right. Wow. Good story, man. So after law school, I think you worked for one firm other firm before you started up with Fredrikson and Byron. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. So when I was after my first year of law school, I applied for this program, which would give me a summer internship after my first year of law school. And so, I think at that time there were like 25 positions available and like well over 100 applicants, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the 25 selected.
Say those numbers again.
What's that?
Say those numbers again.
There were well over 100 applicants,
Okay.
and there was only a place for 25 to participate in this program.
Okay. You got
Yeah, so luckily, I was selected to participate. And so how that program worked was there were 25 employers for the summer, either law firms or, corporate legal departments. And what we had to do is the 25 participants, we had to go through interviews all in one day with all 25 employers. So from about 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., you went from one to the next in like 10, 15-minute increments.
Jeez.
And then after those 25 interviews, the 25 law students had to select from 1 to 25, where they preferred to go, where they wanted to work.
Okay.
And then the employers did the same thing. They had to rank the students from 1 to 25 based on where, who they wanted to come work with them. And then the program that administered this whole process would pretty much do a pairing process.
Okay.
Based on those interviews. And so I was paired with a firm called Ryder Bennett. It no longer exists. And that was one of my top choices. I really got along well with the guys in the interview process. I think we talked about March Madness for about 10 minutes, so it was like, we didn't even get on the topic of, law school or the law firm. It was like, we just had a great discussion. It was a good conversation.
Yeah.
And I think, as a result of that, I think they picked me pretty high, and I did the same. So that's who I was ultimately paired with. And fast forward to like a couple of weeks before that summer program was set to start, my legal writing professor sent me a text message, and she was like, "Hey, I heard this firm is about to close its doors. Like, you should go look into that." And I'm in my contract class, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, stop fucking with me. Like, I don't have time for you. And like, we had that type of relationship. She's still, a mentor of mine to this day. And I thought she was totally just like pulling my leg. So like, I actually get up in the middle of my contracts class and I leave and I go to career services. And I'm like, "Hey, did you guys hear that Ryder Bennett's going to close?" And they're like, "No, that would be news to me. We have heard no such thing." And I told them like, what my professor had said. And they're like, "Yeah, you should call the MSBA, the Minnesota State Bar Association. That was who was organizing this summer program." Okay. So I call the person who was the head of that summer program. I'm like, "Hey, this is just what I heard. Like, am I going to have a job in 2 weeks or not?" And she was like, "That's interesting. I had not heard that, but, just let me do some digging. I'll call you right back." So she called me like an hour later. It's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry to say, but like they are closing. Like, I think they had a vote last night, and it leaked, and people, found out. So they weren't able to do like a formal press release that they were closing their doors until much later on." And so I asked her like, "Well, what's going to happen with me?" And she says, "Thankfully there are two firms that have already like reached out and said, 'Hey, we heard about Ryder Bennett. What's going to happen with Chris?' Because they had also ranked me pretty high."
Okay, nice.
So one firm was Lindquist and Venom, the other one was Fredrikson and Byron. And so, they reached out to me directly, and I interviewed with Lindquist and Venom, and they gave me an offer at the end of, the interview. It's like, "Hey, we would love you to come join our summer program." I told them that I had another opportunity with Fredrikson, and so I reached out to them. And at that time, Fredrickson's hiring partner was not available. I think he was out of town. And so they're like, "We're almost positive we can give you an offer, but we can't until, the hiring committee meets." And so I ended up saying, "I appreciate the opportunity. I'm just going to take this job with Lindquist because it's on the table and I start in 2 weeks."
Yeah.
And so I started my summer there. Great summer experience. That's the first time I was exposed to what being a lawyer was like, especially in private practice. Growing up, I didn't know any lawyers. All I had known was what I saw on TV, and that's not an accurate depiction of what lawyers do. And so, while I worked at Lindquist that summer, it was a great experience. And at the end of that summer, Fredrikson and Byron had reached out and said, "Hey, we're sorry that we missed you this first summer, but we'd like you to come back after your 2L summer and clerk with us, if you're interested in that." And so I told the recruiter at my firm that I was at that, I'm going to go have this interview. And she was like, "We don't want you to leave. Like, we're going to give you an offer." And I was like, "Okay." She was like, "A permanent offer. Like, if you stick with us next summer and not go anywhere else, you have a job when you graduate." And I was like, "Oh," and that was uncommon at the time. So I said, "Sign me up. Where do I got to sign on the line? I'm going to have a job coming straight out of law school, and a good job at that,
Yeah.
and I didn't even know what lawyers made at the time. And in private practice, I remember when I got my my offer to start at Lindquist that first summer, I called HR. I was like, I think you guys made a mistake. And they were like, well, is everything okay? And I was like, I think there's like one too many zeros on this offer letter. Like, you guys realize that I'm in law school. I don't know jack squat. And you're going to pay me this, like, weekly for 10 weeks over the summer. They're like, yeah, that's kind of what our associates make. And so, we want this experience to be as if you're a full-time lawyer with us for 12 weeks over the summer, 10 or 12 weeks over the summer. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, man,
Awesome.
that was more money than I'd ever seen, at that point. So I was like, yep, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I started my career. Right after graduation, I graduated when the market tanked. So, the economy crashed in 2008. I graduated in 2009. And even though I had this job offer, my start date was deferred a little bit, a few months, just because, that was happening everywhere. Some of my classmates got their offers pulled. Like, people were saying, we understand you're supposed to start when you graduated, but unfortunately, like, the economy's down and we just don't have jobs. And so fortunately enough, I was able to start January 2010, was the first time I started my career, and, the rest has been history.
So you started at Lindquist, is that right?
Yep, and it's now known as a Ballard Spar.
Okay.
Yep.
Then how long were you there before you went over to Fredrikson?
I was at Lindquist and Venom for about 6 years.
Okay. So now you're at Fredrikson, and how's that going? What are some of the specialties that you focus on, your area of law that you like to practice?
Yep. So, I'll start with, so when I started my career, well, I'll backtrack a little bit. When I was in law school, I thought I was going to be a corporate lawyer. I didn't want to be a litigator. I didn't want to go to court. I thought, I would, be the deal guy, companies buying companies. That's what I wanted to do. And so that's what my focus was as a summer associate and while I was in law school. All the electives I took were geared towards that. And so before I was about to start full time, I talked to the firm and they said, hey, the economy just tanked. There is no, transaction work that's, available right now. No deals are being done. So we would encourage you to join one of our litigation practice groups. And so I was like, all right, I understand that, it's a business need. And so I think there were 2 practice groups for me to choose from: insurance recovery and real estate and construction litigation. And as a summer associate, I had made some connections with some of the real estate lawyers. So I decided, you know what, let me start my career doing that. And that's, it was booming at the time, right? The real estate market had just crashed, ton of foreclosures, banks trying to recoup their funds. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So I started my career doing real estate and construction litigation, did that for about 3 years or so. And then once the market started to stabilize, I, changed to just a general litigation practice, a business litigation practice. And around, years 4 or 5 as an attorney, I started working with a securities litigation group. And ultimately, the practice group leader in that group became my mentor, my sponsor. He took me under his wing. He helped me navigate and, elevate as an attorney. And so I was doing securities litigation with him. And, around year 6, he said, hey, I'm going to make a switch. I'm going to move over to Fredrikson and Byron. I'm going to start their securities litigation practice over there. And I'd love for you to come with me. And so ultimately I made that transition with him, and it was, a great opportunity. Fredrikson has been an amazing place to work. I get to continue to work with my mentor, Terry, who has, again, been instrumental in my career. I became an equity shareholder about a year and a half to 2 years ago. And that was, due to the support I had around me, particularly, my mentor. And so, Fredrikson has been great. It's an entrepreneurial firm, and they really allow their attorneys to pretty much develop the practice as they want. So while I've been, a business litigator for the last 11 years, about 2 years ago, I decided, I wanted to start a new practice group at Fredrikson, which wasn't in existence at the time, and that's the sports and entertainment practice group.
Okay.
So when I was in law school, I was interested in sports and entertainment, and I'd met some people in the industry, and they pretty much were like, unless you have the appropriate connections, a robust network, it's a cutthroat industry. It's hard to get into. And so that's why, even though I participated in the Sports and Entertainment Law Society, I didn't pursue a career in that when I graduated. But After about 5 years into practice, I got involved with a venture to open up a new nightclub in downtown Minneapolis called the Exchange and Alibi Lounge. And it was actually through that venture that I started to, develop a lot of relationships that, would put me in a position where I thought, hey, even though I didn't start my career doing sports entertainment stuff, I think I'm in a position where I can now.
Hmm.
And so I approached the firm and said, look, these are the contacts I have. This is my business plan. This is what I want to do. And they gave me the green light. They gave me complete support and was like, all right, go for it. And at the time I was still a senior associate. And, I remember, talking to firms like, if I launch this group, I want to be the co-chair of the practice group. Like, this is my baby. This is my thing.
Sure.
And, at the time they're like, yeah, I don't think there are any associates that, are co-chairing practice groups, but, they gave me an exception, again, which showed the tremendous support that they had in my vision and what I wanted to do. And so, we launched the sports entertainment practice group, and it's been going well. I had like ideas of who I wanted to work with in that space. And, fortunately for me, I have the pleasure and privilege of working with them now.
Sports entertainment and practice group. So is that most of what your day is filled up with today at work?
Yeah, a lot of what my daily stuff, I mean, it's all over the place. One of the things that I learned over the last year and a half or so as a shareholder is, my practice became more business development than actual practice of law.
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
when I first started being a lawyer, it was like, okay, you have to develop skills. You have to know how to be a lawyer. That's doing legal research and writing, knowing how to argue in courts, knowing how to write briefs, that day-to-day stuff. And so I developed all those skills as an associate. And then, it was, all right, you got to develop a book of business. At a law firm, you need to have clients. We're in a service industry,
Mhm.
so as a shareholder, you want to bring in those clients. And so my day to day, really shifted from doing like just pure legal stuff all day long to now, having to take calls, do some marketing, business development meetings, prior to the pandemic, going to ball games, dinners, lunches, coffees, things like that.
Mm.
Um, so that I can develop, a book of business.
And your book of business that you're trying to develop today, what would that client of yours typically look like? Would it be the entrepreneur looking to start up a new business, or I don't know, what is that? What does a client look like for you?
It runs the gamut. So, I work with individuals and companies from startup entrepreneurs to like nationally recognized professional athletes and, household name type clients.
Okay.
So everything in between, really. I would say that an overwhelming majority of percentage of my clients are diverse professionals. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is, something that I'm extremely passionate about, particularly, as a legal practitioner. And so I try to work with a lot of, minority businesses, small businesses, startups, and definitely have, that side of the spectrum that I work with regularly, as well as the large, Fortune 500 type clients as well. Our firm works with a lot of that clientele base. And so, when I say that, both sides of the spectrum and everything in between.
Okay. So if a potential client is listening to this, what might be some specific things you could help them with? Anything off the top of your head, that, well, I can help with this, and this?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen more and more, entrepreneurs, right? So during the middle of this pandemic, people are at home, people are not working, and people are thinking of ways to, generate revenue, take care of their families. And so, born out of the pandemic, I think, was entrepreneurialism. I've seen
Sure.
so many businesses start up during the middle of the pandemic, and ones which you're like, there are 30 restaurants closing, and you're opening one, And so that was actually one of my clients.
Okay.
They had just launched right before the pandemic, and then they opened up a second concept during the pandemic.
Okay.
And so, right off the cuff, things, that we can help with are, business formation. If you need help starting a business, what that looks like. If you have other people that you're going to be working with, other partners, we can help get those operating agreements in place. We can protect your intellectual property. We can file trademarks on your behalf. We can help you develop an employee handbook, really anything. And so that's what my practice has really evolved into, is I'm kind of like your concierge lawyer, right? So it's like, I don't want to know which IP lawyer to call, which trust and estates lawyer to call, which lawyer to call for litigation. Just call Chris, just one person.
Yeah.
And, based on what your legal needs are, I will work with my team internally to make sure that that specific area is taken care of.
Nice.
So, I mean, it's really all of those areas. I work with a professional athlete now. And, when I first started working with him, we helped do his estate planning. He was just about to have his first child. And so we did his estate planning, and, he bought his first home, and then, he's getting ready to get married. And so we're helping with the prenup agreements. He wanted to start a nonprofit for an AAU program he runs. So we helped develop that. He had some investment opportunities in another state. And so we looked at that private placement memorandum. So it's really, whatever it is that you're facing, has legal ramifications, right? I think boiled down on its very fundamental level. When people ask, like, when do you need a lawyer? I say, before you sign anything, if it has any bearing on your career, finances, any of that, you should have, a lawyer look at it, whether it's a commercial lease agreement, a purchase agreement, anything.
Yeah.
And then as an entrepreneur, you want to protect your assets, right? So whatever you are developing and creating, you want to protect that. In part, the reason why I started the sports entertainment practice group is because, as a huge sports fan myself, I love watching sports. I love playing sports. When ESPN, kicked off their 30 for 30, I saw the one called Going Broke, right? And just to see the statistics around how many athletes file for bankruptcy within like minutes of retiring, right? I didn't understand that. You make hundreds of millions of dollars and you retire, and like within 2 years you're bankrupt. That blew my mind. And so that told me, like, they did not have the right team of advisors around them, whether it's financial advisor, trusted business managers, lawyers, whatever. And so I decided, I want to help these guys. I want to work with them to make sure that, they're taken care of and they're able to take care of their family. Because if you think about it, they don't have a professional like mine. I can be a lawyer until I'm 80, God willing, and, I'm healthy and, continue to do well and provide for my family. But when you're a professional athlete, you have a very small window, to earn really, probably the bulk of income that needs to stretch for your whole life. Right. So if you're young in your 20s, even if you have a stellar and a long career, I mean, there's life after that sport. Right. So you have to make the right decisions so that, all the wealth that you're accumulating lasts for the span of your life and your legacy and beyond that. Kids and, putting kids in college, kids in college and things like that. And so all that takes preparation and planning. And so that's one of the reasons why I started the sports entertainment practice group, was so that I can help, athletes in that space.
For some reason, I'm having flashbacks to the HBO TV show Ballers.
Yeah.
Rock.
Yeah.
Rock Jr. maybe.
I wish I was making this kind of money. That's for sure. But he has a great story. Dwayne Johnson has a remarkable story. And is definitely inspiring. But yeah, I watch Ballers, great show. And so, yeah, I have a passion for just wanting to help people. And, particularly, I love being a lawyer, but I wanted to find a way to intersect my passion with my practice, right? And I'm passionate about sports and music and entertainment. And so, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do things that I actually enjoy.
All right. Is that where the future is going? You gonna stay focused on the sports and entertainment side and maybe open up another club downtown Minneapolis, or what are you thinking?
I don't know about the open up another club. That venture's been going really well. I love, working with the team that I have there. But I'm entrepreneurial. I'm always going to continue to explore opportunities and new spaces. As far as sports entertainment, that practice, again, it's still in its infancy stage, only a couple years in, but yeah, we're looking to expand it. We're looking at exploring esports, which is a new booming area. As I mentioned, we're always evolving with the marketplace. And so I'm going to continue to work with athletes and help them and do things on that side of, my profession from the entrepreneurial aspect. with being involved in the exchange, as I mentioned, I host weekly happy hours that's geared towards bringing professionals together, primarily professionals of color together. Been doing that for 4 years. And, I'm super involved in, diversity, equity, inclusion. I mentioned that. And so that's one of the avenues that I get to do that.
Okay.
I have 3 kids, so raising them and trying to teach them a lot of the tools that I did not have growing up, right?
Right.
As a parent, you think about, I want to give my kids a better life and better opportunities than I had. So that's one of the things I'm really focused on as well.
Yes.
I started a clothing line called Elevate. This is a hoodie here.
Oh,
Can't really see it because it's there we go.
yeah.
And so Elevate, that name came from the happy hour that I started 4 years ago. It's called Elevate Our Network. This is the logo.
Okay.
And from that, just talking to my kids about entrepreneurship and, deciding, hey, this logo is really cool. It was actually my brother-in-law who said, yo, that logo is pretty dope. Like, you should put that on some merch. And so I was like, all right, that's a great idea. And so started that business with my kids, and so we've been marketing that on social media. They have shirts that they wear all the time. So it's really cool. And,
Nice.
hoping to continue to expand this brand as well.
Well, Chris, man, you got a great story. It's the kid from the wrong side of the railroad tracks kind of makes it big, and I love your mindset and your positivity about the situations. You not being the victim, but taking it by the balls, man, and making things happen. And I appreciate that in people for sure. So if I don't know if I'm a potential client and either on the sports side or entertainment side or business side, and I need to get a hold of you, Chris, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the best way to get in touch with me is via email. So my email address is CPHAM. So first initial, last name, Pham at Fredlaw, FREDLAW.com. So that's a good place to get in touch with me there. Also on social media, on Instagram, my handle is Chris_Pham_ESQ, and also Chris Pham on Facebook. So, and I'm also on LinkedIn as well. So any of the social media platforms, definitely, go check me out. A lot of what I'm doing is often on there from the events that I'm hosting. Actually have a couple of events, so I'll take this time to give a quick shout out to those.
Yeah.
At the Exchange tomorrow, Friday, from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., hosting an event called R&B and Chill, which is starts off with a R&B music, laid back vibe, and then it turns up to hip hop after that. But again, it's a great place to just come and connect with others. We have 2-for-1 drinks from 8 to 10. We have bottle service specials. It's a good vibe. We've had over the last several weeks since, we've been allowed to reopen, we've had several hundred people, through our doors. I had a birthday party on May 7th. And I think, we had like over 300 people there.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a great place to check out. And then on Saturday, we're doing a Memorial Day weekend theme, red, white, and denim. And that's at a newish lounge in Northeast Minneapolis called Hyde Kitchen and Cocktails. So that'll be from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So if you're looking to get out and, meet some really cool folks, those are the opportunities to do so.
Great. And what's the address of the club?
10 South 5th Street is the address to the Exchange. We're right across the street from the Gay 90s and Augie's Cabaret. So we're literally right on 5th and Hennepin, right on the light rail in the Lumber Exchange building.
Got it. Chris, I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you opening up and your candor behind your childhood story. It touched my heart. I can relate to some of the things you've gone through, and I really appreciate it, man. And I wish you the best at this point moving forward.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jason. I appreciate you taking the time to interview me. And these stories that we have, the reason why I don't hesitate to share is because there are, like you said, people can relate to them.
Mm-hmm.
We're all dealt a hand of cards, and a lot of people can make excuses, product of my environment, shitty situation, no parents, whatever the case may be. But we all have the same 24 hours in a day, and like you said, if you just grab life by the balls. I mean, you can make whatever you want with it. And so, that's why I share my story. And I do things like these webcasts or go speak to high school students, because I want them to know it doesn't matter where you're from, where you grew up, like, you can do something. And so, I'm hoping that message gets out there, and, we can continue to see other people elevate in their life, hence the name of the brand.
Yeah. All right, Chris. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you. Yep. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.